The atmosphere in the dining room seemed to harden the moment my mother-in-law spoke. Sophia, dear, I hope you understand this trip is meant for just the family. Her words were laced with a sweetness so artificial it almost stung. She reached over, patting my hand as if offering comfort, though the glint of satisfaction in her eyes betrayed her. You can surely find something to keep you busy, while Jacob enjoys some much-needed quality time with his parents and sister. The fine china she'd rented and proudly called family heirlooms suddenly looked cheap under the chandelier's glow. No one at the table dared break the tense silence. Jacob half rose from his seat before hesitating. His sister Natalie avoided eye contact, studying the wine swirling in her glass, while his father Robert seemed unusually captivated by the folds of his napkin. In the center of the table lay the glossy cruise brochure, Royal Crown Cruises, Mediterranean Voyage. Its pages opened to the suite his mother had been boasting about for nearly half an hour. The irony made my chest tighten. That very suite bore my personal design choices. My name is Pamela. I'm 28, an executive in the hospitality industry, and this is how my mother-in-law's plan to exclude me from a vacation backfired spectacularly. I was raised by William Kennedy, the founder of Royal Crown Cruises. From a young age, I was taught that true wealth is never about showing off. It's about kindness, respect, and how you treat the people around you. My father built his company on service and sustainability, not snobbery. When I met Jacob 3 years ago, he was working as a marine biologist on one of our coral reef restoration projects. What drew me to him was his sincerity, his love for the ocean, his complete disregard for status and wealth. I never led with my last name or my position in the company. When we first spoke, I introduced myself simply as Pamela from Guest Relations. I wanted him to fall for me, not for my family's name or bank account. And when he did, I knew it was real. Jacob was free of the games and calculations that so often come with money. His family, however, was another story entirely. Irene, my mother-in-law, thrived on appearances. Designer labels were displayed like trophies, their credit cards stretched dangerously thin to maintain the illusion of affluence. From the start, she poked and prodded about my financial situation. "Oh, you work for a cruise line?" she'd asked during our first meeting, one brow arched. "Doing what exactly?" "Customer relations," I said with a smile, choosing not to mention that I was in charge of guest experience for the entire global fleet. Even at our wedding, an intimate beach ceremony on one of our company's private islands, which I'd simply described as a quiet local spot, Irene had sighed with theatrical disappointment. "Really, Jacob? Couldn't you have picked somewhere with a little more prestige? I suppose I'll just have to tell everyone it was a destination wedding to make it sound better." For an entire year, I endured her passive-aggressive remarks. Job postings she thought were more appropriate, her advice on where classy people shopped, her lectures about the importance of appearances. I let it slide, because Jacob was worth every bit of irritation. Besides, I knew that one day, without me saying a word, she'd find out exactly who I was. I just didn't expect that day to be today. Over an overly polished table, under her self-satisfied gaze, with the brochure of my family's luxury cruise line lying open between us. The dining room went completely silent after Irene's words landed like a slap. "Are you seriously uninviting my wife from a family trip?" Jacob's voice was sharp, his hands gripping the table so tightly his knuckles had gone pale. "Oh, don't be so dramatic, darling." Irene gave a dismissive wave as though brushing away an annoying fly. She was never really invited. I mean, let's be honest, she works for a cruise line. She can easily arrange a cheap little getaway for herself somewhere else. Her smile was sweet on the surface, but her eyes glimmered with triumph. I could feel Jacob about to explode, but I placed a calming hand on his arm. This wasn't his battle, this was mine. "You're absolutely right, Irene," I said softly, pulling my phone from my bag. "I do have a few connections in the cruise industry." I tapped a number I knew by heart and put the call on speaker. "Royal Crown Cruises, Executive Office. How may I help you?" My father's deep, familiar voice answered. "Hi, Dad," I said warmly, locking eyes with Irene and watching her smug expression falter. "Remember the Gardner family's Mediterranean cruise reservation next month? The one booked in the owner's suite? I'm afraid we need to cancel it." The silence that followed was thick and heavy. Irene's face went from triumphant to puzzled to ashen in a matter of seconds. Of course, sweetheart, my father replied. May I ask why? That's your suite, your personal cabin. Did you and Jacob decide to take it instead? Irene let out a tiny, wheezing noise, like the air had been knocked out of her. No, Dad, I said calmly, still holding Irene's gaze. It seems there was a bit of confusion about who counts as family. I wouldn't want anyone to feel awkward during their vacation. I see, Dad said with a hint of amusement in his voice. I'll have the deposit refunded right away. Will you be at tomorrow's board meeting? Wouldn't miss it, I replied smoothly. Thanks, Dad. Love you. I hung up, tucked my phone away, and took a sip of water as the room collectively tried to process what just happened. You're her father? Irene stammered, clutching the edge of the table. Oh, I'm sorry, I said lightly. I assumed you knew, considering how much you seem to know about Royal Crown Cruises. My father is William Kennedy, the owner of the company. I'm not just some employee. I'm the director of Global Guest Experience and the heir to the business. I nodded toward the glossy brochure Irene had been waving around all evening. That suite you booked? That's actually my cabin. It's reserved for my family. I was going to surprise you all by upgrading your booking to our top-tier family experience. But since I'm apparently not family enough, Jacob was practically shaking with suppressed laughter. Natalie had her hand over her mouth to stifle a grin. Robert's face had gone pale with embarrassment. But you're in customer service, Irene whispered weakly. Yes, I agreed. I also oversee operations, environmental programs, and strategic initiatives. My father believes in learning every corner of the business firsthand. I let the words hang there, a pointed reminder of her earlier comments about standards. Irene suddenly stood up, chair scraping loudly against the floor. Excuse me. She fled from the table, disappearing upstairs. I am so sorry, Robert said after a long pause. We had no idea. Of course you didn't, I said gently. We wanted to be treated like a normal couple. Jacob fell in love with me for who I am, not what I have. I had hoped the rest of the family would do the same. Natalie let out a giggle she could no longer contain. I can't believe Mom just tried to uninvite you from a cruise you literally own. This is better than TV. We heard Irene upstairs later that night, crying and frantically calling her friends, no doubt backtracking on every brag she'd made about the upcoming luxury trip. As Jacob and I were leaving, Robert pulled me aside. Would it be possible to keep the reservation? He asked hesitantly. I smiled. I haven't actually canceled anything yet. But if the trip is going to happen, some things will need to change. And over the next several weeks, they did. Irene's attitude shifted completely. The cutting remarks about my job, the digs about my status, they disappeared. For the first time since I'd married into the family, I felt like she truly saw me as one of them. Instead of staying cold and distant, Irene took a completely different approach. She became almost overly polite, constantly complimenting Royal Crown Cruises and going out of her way to seem interested in what I did for a living. One afternoon, she brought up an article she had read about our coral reef protection program, clearly an attempt to impress me. That's actually really admirable, she said, her tone unusually warm. Thank you, I replied with a small smile. Would you like to hear more about it? We're working on some very exciting research right now. Little by little, Irene began to understand that her fixation on appearances and social status had nearly cost her something far more valuable than a first-class cruise. It had almost destroyed her chance to truly connect with her son and me. A month later, we boarded the Mediterranean cruise together. Irene, Robert, Natalie, Jacob, and I, true to my word, I upgraded them to our top family package, complete with connecting suites and VIP access. On our very first night at sea, we had dinner at the captain's table. Irene barely spoke during the meal, her eyes quietly taking in the elegant setting. Then, in an unexpectedly soft voice, she said, Pamela, I need to apologize. Not just for that awful dinner incident, but for, well, everything. I was so obsessed with looking wealthy that I forgot what true class really is. And what's that? I asked gently. She gave me a small, humbled smile. Treating people with respect. Like you and your father do. I've been on this ship for less than a day, and I can already tell how much the crew admires you. Not out of fear. Not because of your title, but because they truly respect you. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Welcome to the real family business, Irene. From that moment on, something shifted. Irene stopped trying to prove herself and started enjoying the trip. Robert surprised everyone with an impressive karaoke performance at the ship's nightclub. Natalie discovered a passion for marine biology and ended up applying for one of our internships. And Jacob? He just smiled knowingly and said, "Told you they'd come around." Now, 6 months later, family dinners are actually pleasant. Irene still occasionally slips back into her old habits, but she catches herself quickly. She's even started volunteering for some of our cruise line's charity programs. Just last week, she called me, her voice emotional. "Pamela," she said, "I just found out that Margaret Thompson, the friend who's always bragging about her money, booked a cruise with one of your competitors." I couldn't help but notice the way she said, "your competitors." "And why is that upsetting you?" I asked, amused. "Because Royal Crown is so much better," she said passionately. "Their environmental record is awful, and I've heard they don't treat their staff well. Can't you help me move her booking over to us? I want her to see what a real luxury cruise feels like." I smiled into the phone. "You know what, Irene? I think I can make that happen." Later that night, Jacob and I sat down to dinner at our home overlooking the harbor. He asked me if I ever wished I'd told his family about my background sooner. "Not at all," I said without hesitation. "It happened exactly the way it needed to. Your mother had to learn that lesson about what true status really means. And you getting to dramatically reveal it all at dinner had nothing to do with it," he teased with a grin. I laughed. "Okay, maybe that part was a little satisfying. But what really matters is that it actually changed something. Your mom finally understands what my dad always taught me. That true luxury isn't about excluding people, it's about creating experiences that bring them together." Jacob raised his glass. "To family cruises." "To family cruises," I echoed, smiling. "And to mothers-in-law who finally get it. We're already planning our next family cruise for next year. Irene is making lists of all the activities she wants to try, without a single comment about appearances. Robert is thrilled about the new golf simulator being installed. Natalie will join us during her break from the marine biology program. And me, I'm just happy that my family, both the one I was born into and the one I married into, has found its balance. The owner's suite Irene once tried to keep me out of, we've officially renamed it the family suite. Because the sweetest form of revenge isn't about shutting people out, it's about inviting them in. My dad still laughs about the whole ordeal. He even uses the story in our company's customer service training, with names changed, of course. "Remember," he tells the new staff, "every guest deserves to be treated like family, even if they're not technically the owner's daughter-in-law." Irene overheard him once during a ship tour and actually laughed. "I deserve that," she admitted. "But I'm learning." And she truly is. We all are. Which is why our next family cruise is going to be even better, because this time, everyone is welcome for all the right reasons.